Hello to every Valko supporter, Valko lover out there, anyone who's basically been a part of this boycott, a part of this whole Bring Back Valko movement. If you have been keeping up with me, you know that I've just been giving updates every now and then from things that I have been able to find about everything that's been going on because it has been a really long boycott. There's been a lot of silence from Infold and paper games, but the community certainly hasn't been quiet. And everyone is just trying to find ways to look for information, to understand what's going on. And I'm just one of those people, and I wanted to help out anyone else who might need that. But yeah, today I just wanted to talk about what I believe is happening with Infold slash paper games behind the scenes based on what I have pieced together from official statements and articles out there. The first thing that I'll be talking about is how I have been able to find evidence, I believe, of Infold slash paper games, how they seem to be pursuing legal action against those who defamed them. There's just been a lot of different news articles that are written, and I believe there's one which mentions something like that. Plus, also on Red Note, a lot of the CN girls are saying that yes, it's true, Infold slash paper games is pursuing legal action. And if you remember that statement that they wrote on the 29th of June, which they released on Red Note, they mentioned that they are going to be pursuing the people who are basically behind the defamatory statements that have been going around, the rumors, the malicious lies and fabrications and stuff like that. But yeah, I guess these are just the talking points that I'll be talking on today. There's this news article that came out a while ago, which I thought was really important, and I wanted to read it out today. Okay, I translated the article into English, so let's read the article. The title is From Traffic Competition to Value Competition. The gaming industry urgently needs to say goodbye to disorderly internal friction. On July 18, a compilation of timelines and materials regarding the events surrounding the game Love and Deep Space, compiled by players based on publicly available information, circulated online. The materials, which gathered information from June 29 to July 1st, including inflammatory posts, public posts, screenshots of comment sections, page interaction data, and editing records, stated that relevant clues had been submitted to relevant platforms and departments for verification. So I believe in a previous video, I did make mention of that 31-page PDF, which was compiled by a lot of our CN sisters about this one Weibo account holder who was found to be basically one of the ringleaders in spreading a lot of these defamatory posts, twisting national historical trauma with in-game content for personal benefit. So yeah, I talked about it. Here's the post that was made on Threads. If anybody wants to find it, I translated the first page into English and I read it out loud. So I do believe that this is the PDF document that is being spoken about in the article. And I remember the PDF document was submitted to an authority that deals with these kinds of things in China. So yeah. Going on, it says, according to a search conducted by Reports on July 18, using the methods listed in the materials, many of the original posts were no longer directly viewable. According to platform policy, the inaccessibility of such content may be due to the poster deleting it themselves, adjusting permissions, platform actions, or other reasons. It is understood that some players have submitted relevant clues to the relevant authorities. In addition, some parties involved have filed lawsuits regarding certain public statements, and the courts have accepted the cases. So I take that part to mean that obviously this article doesn't name any names, but from what I've been able to find and just from keeping up with the whole case that's been going on and with what the CN girlies are saying, it does seem to be that Infold is the one that's being spoken about. And I believe this means that they have filed lawsuits against some individuals or just whoever was involved in this. And from here, we find out that the courts have accepted the cases, right? So if you will recall from the original statement on Xiaohongshu, which was released by Love and Deep Space on the 29th of July, they talked about it. They said that here is that translation. It says, however, at every sensitive moment, a large number of online accounts appear to spread rumors, using this to incite player emotions. Such rumors frequently take things out of context or fabricate false information and manufacture screenshots of fake chat logs to spread them, inciting emotionally charged commentary to deceive some players into trusting them in order to achieve personal goals. We have also noticed that some online accounts show clear signs of organized fabrication and dissemination of false information about us. Such behavior severely hurts players' feelings, exploits players to generate malicious traffic, damages the community environment, and seriously harms our brand image and legitimate rights and interests. We will pursue accountability to the fullest extent. So yeah, that statement alone makes it clear to me that yeah, Infold was already planning on going after these people who were spreading all of these malicious rumors about them, generating traffic on social media platforms in order to spread these rumors as far and wide as they possibly could. And this article just seems to be confirming that yes, Infold has done that and the courts have accepted the cases. So it does seem like Infold seems to be pursuing legal action against these people, meaning that they'll probably be embroiled in legal affairs for a while. Going on with the article, it says, as of the date of publication, the cases have not yet been heard in court, and the relevant responsibilities await determination by the judicial authorities in accordance with the law. The allegations of illegality, account association, and motivations in the whistleblower's materials are claims made by the compiler of the materials, and no definitive conclusion has yet been reached. So I guess that's basically just enunciating and emphasizing that no one has been found guilty yet. So far, it doesn't seem as if any arrests have been made. However, the dissemination process presented in the materials raises a question worthy of industry attention. When specific product disputes quickly shift to corporate stances, creator identities, and player evaluations, is it possible for platform influence to deviate from the product itself and further impact business operations and industry competition? Behind a single document, how can a product dispute escalate into group conflict? According to the document, the publisher demanded that the company issue a public apology, suspend service for rectification, and take disciplinary action against relevant personnel. Screenshots of the saved documents show that about half an hour after the post was published, the page displayed 462 reposts, 875 comments, and 9,396 likes. Subsequently, under the same topic, expressions demanding the server be shut down, the staff be punished, and linking the company and some player groups to serious value labels appeared one after another. Screenshots of the page editing history in the materials show that the relevant content was restored to public status several times between the evening of June 29 and July 1st. So, remember, if you watched the previous video where I read out loud the very first page of the 31-page PDF document, it did say that one of the things that that Weibo account holder did was repeatedly deleting and reposting the same content in order to escape community guidelines and also in order to spread the rumors that she was trying to spread as far and wide as she possibly could. And yeah, here it does seem to be hinting at how there was some sort of organization behind this. And that just reminds me of that Shanghai police article that came out a while ago, which I also talked about in one of my previous videos. Let me just go to that article right now and translate it into English. Okay, yeah. In the very first paragraph, it talks about how online trolls were hired to post thousands of malicious reviews to discredit competitors, etc., etc. There was a case that made by Shanghai police today, which outlined an ARC industry chain in cyberspace. Defamation can be contracted out, post deletion can be priced, and data has become stolen goods. So yeah, I remember I made it clear in my previous video that nowhere in that article did they make specific links to the Love and Deep Space situation. However, I feel like given what the information was in the article, what everything was talking about, and given everything that's just been happening with the Valko haters in China and stuff, and given just the date, because this article was released on the 3rd of July, all of that can be, I don't know, like evidence that these are things that are linking to the same thing, right? And even now in this article that we're reading about, it does seem to be like these things are linked, even though nowhere does it explicitly say that it's talking about the Love and Deep Space situation. But yeah, going on with the article, pages 6 through 23 of the material also contains screenshots of multiple accounts posting content related to similar materials within a short period of time. Some comments have shifted the controversy from textual issues to corporate stances, creator identities, and player groups, and have even included offensive terms. The viewpoints are similar and the posting times are close. The production team of Love and Deep Space subsequently stated publicly that there were instances of misrepresentation, fabricated screenshots, and some accounts organically fabricating and disseminating false information online. So, of course, that would refer to the statement that was made by Love and Deep Space on Red Note, which I just finished reading a paragraph from that. However, no official investigation conclusions have yet been released by the platform or relevant departments regarding specific accounts and dissemination relationships. It should be noted that the phenomena of posting in close succession, using similar materials or expressions, simultaneous dissemination across platforms, and deleting and reposting posts can only serve as clues for verifying the chain of dissemination and cannot be used to directly conclude that there is an online troll or army or organized manipulation. So, yeah, the article is saying that there is no substantial evidence as of yet to say that within the Love and Deep Space case specifically, that there absolutely were organized online trolls and armies that manipulated everything, right? I'm just saying that because of that Shanghai article that was released earlier, links can be made that there were online trolls and armies and stuff like that behind the scenes. However, there's no evidence that this is something that's happening in the Love and Deep Space case specifically. Now, to go on, whether there is unified command, shared interest, or a task relationship between the relevant accounts still needs to be further investigated by relevant departments based on evidence such as platform back-end data, account control relationships, and group chat instructions. Whether it constitutes an online troll army, malicious hype, or other illegal or irregular behavior should ultimately be investigated and determined by the platform and relevant departments in accordance with the law. So that's very interesting. It seems to be hinting that there are investigations happening behind the scenes, right? That was one of the talking points that I had initially, that there does seem to be investigations that are being done on several different scales. So the government and the police seem to be investigating the online dissemination, amongst other things. What stands out to me about these investigations is that these investigations no longer seem to be against Infold, but in favor of Infold. And what I mean by that is that I watched Mujin's latest video. I think it was a really enlightening video and stuff like that. And in it, he basically talks about how thousands of complaints were lodged to some authority in China. And when it reaches a certain number of complaints against an individual, a company, or whatever it might be, that authority is basically obligated to the public to investigate and to look into whatever case is being made. And it doesn't matter how small or insignificant the case might be. If a certain number of complaints have been lodged, they automatically have to start doing an investigation into that. And it seems that's what happened with Love and Deep Space, Infold, Paper Games. It seems like all of these people were lodging complaints to this authority, and at first the complaints, they were not enough for an investigation to be done, but eventually they reached that point where it was like, okay, it doesn't matter if people are complaining about a video game character, and it doesn't matter how silly that may seem, how small or insignificant it might seem to complain about a video game character to a government authority, right? At that point, they just have to go ahead and do the investigation into Infold, and I think that's what triggered Infold to release that statement on the 30th, basically canceling Valko. It was because they were being reported and it had reached a certain number of reports that were being made, and they were probably contacted by that authority figure to say that, hey, look, people are complaining about this, so we are basically obligated to do an investigation on you. However, I feel like the investigations have been done, they've been concluded, and we can tell that from the government affiliated state media, which released a statement that put Valko and Infold in a positive light. And from that, we can basically conclude that the government, they did their investigation into Infold and they were found to be clean. They didn't condemn Infold for releasing Valko. They didn't find anything wrong. But it does seem like further investigations are still being done even today. But like as I said earlier, these investigations don't seem to be against Infold, but rather for Infold, right? Loose ends and stuff like that still need to be tied up, especially legally. So, yeah, going on with the article. The incident thus presents two simultaneous factual threads. On the one hand, players raised genuine questions about product planning, content arrangement, and user communication. So, these were the valid concerns that players were bringing up at the time that Valko was released. And then it goes on to say that on the other hand, some discussions went beyond specific product issues and evolved into a generalized evaluation of the company, creators, and ordinary players. When traffic becomes a signal, internal costs spread along the industry chain. Retweets, comments, and trending topics on internet platforms can reflect the intensity of dissemination over a certain period of time, but they cannot be directly equated with the number of unique users, long term willingness to pay, and stable market demand. If the traffic is further used to spread false information, distribute homogenized information in bulk, or severely label businesses and brands, market feedback could escalate into business risks. It should be noted that the currently available materials are insufficient to prove the involvement of paid online trolls or competing business in this incident. Any relevant judgments should be based on platform investigations and judicial determinations. That is very, very important to keep in mind. However, even without the involvement of any commercial entities, a communication environment lacking a transparent verification mechanism may produce similar consequences. Emotional content gains higher visibility. Companies quickly adjust projects to cope with short term risks, and real user needs and long term operating data are relegated to a secondary position. Yeah, that's exactly what I feel happened. Short-term risks were prioritized over longer-term, what people actually truly wanted in the long term. And I feel like what we're doing with this boycott and with this movement is showing a sustained effort, proving that the long-term user needs for this game are for Valko to be in the game and not the short-term boycott and initial emotional outburst from when Valko was first released. For the gaming industry, this risk can spread along the entire production chain. Behind characters, storylines, and versions are planning, art, programming, animation, voice acting, localization, platform publishing, and marketing. If a project nearing launch is cancelled, some digital assets may be reusable, but the collaboration costs already invested, the missed version windows, user attention, and market opportunities are difficult to fully recover. Mhm. Most insidious costs occur within the company if the creative team believes that names, numbers, and ordinary text can be rearranged out of context and escalate into issues reflecting the company's stance. The company may continuously expand the scope of its review process, reducing expressions that are realistic and distinctive. Ultimately, it may not only be problematic content that is avoided, but also innovative attempts. So, yeah, these last two paragraphs that I've just read, the first one seems to be talking about how a lot of monetary assets and just financial resources have been poured into creating Valko, and how canceling Valko will really damage all of that for Infold. And the second one seems to be highlighting artistic integrity and how that is something that is valuable and should be protected, which are all points that I highly, highly agree on. According to GPC data, in the first quarter of 2026, the actual sales revenue of China's game market reached RMB 97.172 billion, a year-on-year increase of 13.38%. The actual sales revenue of Chinese self-developed games in overseas markets reached USD 6.331 billion, a year-on-year increase of 31.76%. The industry as a whole continued to grow, and competition among companies increasingly relied on R&D efficiency, original content, and global operation capabilities. In this market phase, the industry should compete on technology, content, service, and IP development, not on negative publicity, label dissemination, or the ability to mobilize complaints. Whether it's the leading companies, small and medium sized teams, or platform service providers, none should disrupt normal market competition through opaque communication methods. Leading companies have more abundant legal, public relations, and platform communication resources, while small and medium sized enterprises and independent studios may bear far more legal and operational costs than they can handle due to a highly concentrated wave of negative publicity. Even without commercial suppression, the disorderly flow of information itself can create a reverse incentive in the industry. Those adept at creating conflict can gain attention, while those who diligently produce content bear the cost. So, yeah, those are some long paragraphs that I just read. But from what I'm understanding, these paragraphs seem to be addressing the ongoing discourse online, which is basically that Infold's slash paper games competitors were the ones who were behind this, right? And this article does make sure to emphasize and stress the point earlier on that there is no evidence, no substantial evidence as of yet to make the conclusive statement that competitors were the ones who were behind everything that has been happening with Infold. However, it does go on to say in these paragraphs that I've just read that if it is true that competitors were behind what is happening with Infold, it is wrong for market competition to basically be allowing for these kinds of dirty, shady, underhanded tricks, right? Competition in the market should be fair, and fair competition relies on technology, content, that kind of things, like doing actual, legitimate, real stuff to win over an audience for the game that you're making, and not in trying to use these shady, underhanded tricks to defeat your competition or whatever. Which again is an important point that I feel is necessary, because it would really set a bad precedent not only just for the game itself but for the entire industry. And the whole part about how smaller companies, they basically won't be able to survive if the industry were to turn out to be that way, right? And I do believe that Info slash Paper Games in China is considered to be a smaller company. I do believe, don't get me wrong, they are like a really wealthy multi-millionaire, if not billion-dollar company, right? But yeah, they are apparently considered to be not that big in China in comparison to other companies. So yeah, going on with the article, as the Clean and Bright campaign continues, competition should return to products and value. These kinds of phenomena are within the scope of key concerns for internet governance. In late May 2026, the Cyberspace Administration of China launched a 2-month special campaign: Clean up the online environment and rectify malicious hype of enterprise related information, which is still ongoing. The campaign explicitly includes the following issues in its scope: hyping up negative information about enterprises during important time periods, such as new product launches, artificially amplifying trending topics through paid traffic, hiring online trolls to spread similar negative information, labeling specific brand users, and inciting consumer antagonism. So I do believe that this is a law or just something legal that has been ongoing in China since May 2026. This special operation also requires website platforms to strengthen their ability to discover, analyze, and handle information that infringes on enterprise rights, improve complaint and reporting channels, standardize analysis and handling procedures, and strengthen coordination and administrative and criminal law enforcement for accounts that need to be dealt with according to the law. This does not mean that business can use online public opinion management to suppress consumer criticism. Normal consumer feedback, media oversight, and fact based content questioning should be protected. This special campaign targets malicious hype, the dissemination of false information, traffic manipulation, cyberbullying, and the exploitation of group antagonism to disrupt market order. The regulations on the management of public channel distribution services of Internet information content, which will take effect on September 1st, further incorporates relevant governance with a normalized institutional framework. So it seems like this whole law that's been ongoing since May 2026 is getting a new update to it on the 1st of September. The regulations explicitly prohibit the creation of topics, speculation, fabrication, and splicing to confuse the public, as well as the incitement of netizens' emotions and the provocation of group antagonism. They also prohibit traffic fraud, the mass publication of homogeneous content, and the organization participation in or assistance in cyberbullying. So, right, and this article doesn't say that the reason why there's going to be this new update to this ongoing law on September 1st. It doesn't say that it's directly linked to the situation with 11 Deep Space, but I feel like the situation with 11 Deep Space, it carries some weight, if you ask me, in this latest update that will be taking effect on the 1st of September in China. Reason being, I just feel like a lot of the listed things that are going to be regulated starting on the 1st of September. They have a lot to do with everything that's been going on with the 11 Deep Space situation. Now, I'm not saying that the 11 Deep Space situation is the only thing, the only case that is facing these kinds of attacks and stuff like that. I'm not in China. I don't know if there are other cases that involve things like this. I'm pretty sure that maybe there could be, and 11 Deep Space happens to be another one of them, right? But yeah, it's just really like it's really great to see this happening, right? That these laws are being updated in this specific way to prevent these kinds of things from happening. From special campaigns to formal regulations, the policy signals are becoming clearer. Online trolls, abnormal traffic, tagged attacks, and matrix style dissemination of false information are entering a more stringent and institutionalized governance phase. This does not mean this particular case has been determined to fall under any of these categories, but it does mean that once complete evidence is obtained regarding related dissemination phenomena, there will be clearer grounds for verification and handling. Platforms must first avoid allowing interaction volume and the number of reports to directly substitute for factual judgment. For abnormally concentrated posts, homogeneous content, and reports that are highly concentrated in a short period of time, technical identification and manual review capabilities should be improved. For involving business operations and public events, transparent channels for appeals, reviews, and evidence preservation should also be provided. Business should preserve original production records, dissemination data, and user feedback to distinguish between product opinions, factual errors, emotional expressions, and unfounded characterizations amidst intense disputes. Not all criticism should be interpreted as an attack, nor should the most vehement pronouncements be taken as the complete market opinion. When addressing issues, media outlets and independent media should raise the bar for sources and evidence, requiring complete context and mutually corroborating factual materials. Yes, a little louder for the people in the back, because it was so triggering seeing all of these media outlets, both in China and just other global media outlets, reporting news in such a reckless, uncaring way. Like, there was just absolutely no journalistic integrity whatsoever in a lot of these different media articles and news stories that were covering this case. So I'm just so glad to see this official news saying this, making this a very important point. Industry organizations can also explore establishing third party verification and mediation mechanisms for disputes over game content, providing companies, players, and platforms with more professional and low conflict dispute resolution channels beyond trending topics and reporting systems. The 15th year plan outlines the need to accelerate the construction of a unified, open, efficient, standardized, and competitive cultural market. So, if you recall, in one of my previous videos, I did talk about the 15th 5 year plan. Sorry, I believe I read that wrong before. The 15th 5 year plan, right? And that's basically the plan which talked about China's plans for cultural export, right? And how video games and specifically Love and Deep Space was specifically outlined to be one of those cultural export things that the government was investing in, right? So, for the gaming industry, this requires companies to uphold content and commercial integrity, while also demanding that the market provide a stable and predictable competitive environment for legitimate innovation. Shifting from traffic competition to value competition means allowing product quality to determine market returns, incorporating genuine user opinions into corporate decision making, subjecting false content and abnormal dissemination to legal verification, and enabling companies of different sizes to compete under the same set of clear rules. Yeah, that is a paragraph that just seems to cover every single issue that Infold slash Paper Games was facing, right? Whether it was backlash from players and haters on the game content, or whether it was false rumors and fabrications being made, or whether it was possible company competition, unfair market competition that was being done. Yeah, this paragraph just seems to be calling for how the bad stuff shouldn't be what determines what happens within the gaming industry in China, right? It should be the good things that are prioritized, and the good things being, the genuine user opinions and stuff like that, right? So the gaming industry already possesses the capability to continuously call original IPs and participate in global competition. If R&D resources are constantly consumed by internal public opinion battles and user trust is eroded through rounds of label-based dissemination, the damage will not only affect a single character or company, but also the entire industry's ability to continuously produce high-quality content, attract talent, and expand markets. Only by enabling platforms to fulfill their responsibilities, allowing companies to focus on product development and revitalizing industry competition through content and innovation, can the gaming industry truly move away from disorderly internal competition and dedicate its limited resources to long term growth. So yeah, that was a really, really amazing article that was written. It's really good news for us Valko supporters. It's good news for Infold. It's just good news all around for this entire movement. So after having read that article to you, the reason why I just felt it important to make this particular video and to read out this article was because I've just been hearing a lot of people on X, on Threads, on Instagram, just on all these different social media platforms, still raising the same question as to why Infold is still silent, why they haven't said anything. People are coming up with deadlines, saying maybe it's the 29th, maybe it's in August, maybe it's this date or that date when Infold will finally come out to us with a public and official statement, right? And it's like, I first want to just start off by saying that I totally, completely understand the frustration that people are feeling. Like, silence is a very, very frustrating thing to come up against. It's just kind of like repeatedly running yourself into a brick wall. You're just not getting anywhere when it comes to silence, right? So I totally understand the frustrations that people are having, but I do feel that at the same time, when people voice these frustrations that they have, they're leaving out a lot of context as to why Infold is keeping silent throughout this time, right? I just finished talking about how it does seem like Infold/Paper Games is pursuing legal action against those who defamed them. And when it comes to legal affairs, it's always best to keep your public statements to a minimum, right? Preferably to maintain silence altogether. When you're going through court proceedings, you don't want anything that's going to be out there in the open that could possibly backfire on you. So that seems perfectly understandable and reasonable as to why Infold would be silent on that front, but it's also not just their legal proceedings that could be a reason for their silence. It does seem like they're doing internal reviews, staff training, game optimization, stuff like that, right? So it just seems to me like they're picking through the game with a fine comb, ensuring that there isn't any kind of future ammo that anti-fans or haters or just disgruntled players might use against them to drag them through the mud like they did this time. And yeah, it's just clear from even the statement that they made on XHS on the 29th of June, where they talked about how we will strengthen training to prevent this from happening again, and will further improve our internal review process to pay closer attention to every detail, ensuring the quality of our online content. And even down below, they say we will continue to optimize the game's content and are committed to bringing everyone a better gaming experience. So, yeah, game optimization, staff training, internal reviews, those are things that are going to take time, right? They're going to have to make sure that nothing offensive is found in the game again, because that whole Unit 731 thing, even though it's definitely true that a lot of the rumors against Valko, against the game, against Infold, they were maliciously fabricated and spread out far and wide in order to bring Infold down. However, it can't be denied that the Unit 731 thing, it did have truth to it. There was the numbers 731 in the game, and there was talk of human experiment in conjunction with that whole 731 part in the world underneath for Xavier, right? It can't be denied that they really messed up with that one. That was a huge blunder and mistake and oversight on their part. So it's understandable why they would need to talk with the staff to make sure that this thing doesn't happen again, because it was really wrong of those staff members to include something like that. And it was wrong for the people who give the green light on what content is acceptable in the game to not flag that. So staff training is very, very important. Internal reviews, game optimization is very, very important. It makes sense why they would want to ensure that they have completely swept up their house and gotten everything in order by the time that they're making that official statement that we're all hoping they would make. There's that new law that is being passed on the 1st of September. Many of the Chinese girls on Red Note that I have been speaking to and just been seeing in different comment sections and stuff, they seem to be speculating that Infold/Paper Games might be waiting actually to speak out about the whole Valko situation, to make an official statement, or to even maybe possibly release Valko after the law has come into effect. And the reason is, once that law has come into effect, it'll be even harder for anti-fans to get away with the things that they have been doing. It'll be easier even for Infold to take legal action if anyone were to even think about starting up on this whole drama again, right? So it makes sense if you think about it like that. As for statements, I just want to say don't be too hopeful that they might say anything on the 29th of July. I know that there's that whole thing that they're supposed to be talking about with Caleb's birthday, stuff like that, on the 29th of July, but it's like maybe they're not going to say anything about Valko, maybe they will. I can't say for sure, but just don't put too much stock in that. Also, I do feel like the 29th of July, it's a bit too close to the 31st of July. And the 31st of July, that's literally 731 if you look at it in numerical form. And that is a sensitive date which directly mirrors the Unit 731 controversy. And if I were Infold, I would not be rushing to make any kind of statement about Valko whatsoever when a lot of the backlash and the drama against him was twisted up with the whole Unit 731 controversy, right? So I just don't see them making any kind of statements on the 29th of July, the 30th, the 31st, not even the 1st of August, because that is a holiday. It's a commemorative holiday. It's called Army Day in China, and they basically commemorate the founding of the People's Liberation Army. So it's unlikely that Info is going to be making any official statements around that time. The last thing that I wanted to talk about today is regarding calls for harsher boycotting methods. On that note, I would just say that it's highly unadvised to do that. So a lot of people have been saying that, oh, there's a whole bunch of Valko haters who are trying to recruit global players into using harsher methods to go against Infold to kind of like force their hand and bring Valko back sooner, right? And for that, it's like I don't have any proof that the people who are saying these kinds of things are for sure haters. They could just be players who are in support of Valko who have reached the end of their rope. They are growing frustrated, and it's so understandable. This has been a really, really difficult and rough time for so many people. So maybe, in their anger and their frustration, they want to use harsher methods to boycott. But it's like, yeah, I would not give in to those kinds of people who are making those kinds of demands. I just feel like it's very, very, very crucial for us global players to not make this boycott look like global is bullying CN companies into compliance. So, yeah, just keep being positive, keep being level headed. There is also just this post on Rednote, which another player talked about. And she was basically posting that about a gentle reminder from someone watching both sides why pressure trending right now could hurt Valko's return. I felt that what she had to say was really insightful and the points that she raised were really good. So she goes on to say, "Hi everyone, I am a Chinese player using a translator to write this, so please excuse any awkward phrasing. I've been following both the overseas communities and the Chinese player communities closely since June 22nd, and I want to share some observations that might help us make smarter choices about how we advocate for Valko. First, what we've done so far is working. The I Petitions campaign, Change.org petitions, the Anime Expo booth, the Wolf Conservation donation, the Mexico Grey Wolf naming, the charity drives, all of this has been acknowledged in Chinese official media as repricing global user demands. This is not exaggeration. An article published on July 20th explicitly referenced our petitions and charitable actions as evidence that Valco represents real market demand. In other words, our constructive, non confrontational approach is being heard at the highest levels. But here's what's happening on the Chinese side right now that you may not see. Since July 20th, several official media outlets, including reform oriented policy publications, have published articles confirming that Valko's storyline complies with domestic content regulations and that after review and compliance, there should be a clear, stable, and predictable path for restoration or continued operation. Now, I'm not exactly sure which news article she's quoting exactly, but it sounds like a really good and hopeful thing that is being said in this article. This is enormous good news. The policy door is open. However, I'm also seeing calls within Chinese social media encouraging overseas fans to launch collective pressure campaigns to push country specific hashtags to trending to force Info's hand. I strongly believe this is the wrong move, and here's why. Number one, it changes the nature of our voice. Right now, our overseas voice is seen as spontaneous, constructive, market driven. If we change to organized pressure trending, it becomes political pressure from abroad. That single shift hands ammunition to people who want to frame Valko as a tool of Western pandering, a narrative that nearly killed him on July 1st. Number two, it forces Infold into a no-win position. Infold has shifted its PR entirely inside the game. In-game announcements only, zero external preheating. They are deliberately staying silent to avoid giving opponents fuel. The policy window needs time, not noise. The July 20th to July 22nd official articles established the framework. What's needed now is Infold completing compliance upgrades, age verification, payment controls, etc., internal cleanup of bad actors who leaked information, legal proceedings against organized rumors, which are already filed in court. So, what should we do? Keep signing the petitions and change.org petitions. They're still collecting signatures. Every new signature adds to the market demand. Keep creating fan art, fics, videos, cosplay. This is the organic cultural presence that makes Valko valuable. Keep donating to wolf conservation and charities in Valko's names. This is unprecedented and powerful. Keep the offline events, booths, billboards, meetups. These create real world proof of demand. Stay rational in public spaces when discussing Valko. Focus on his merits as a character and the value he brings to the game's global ecosystem, not on forcing Infold to obey. So yeah, it's very important not to frame this as overseas versus China because it isn't, and framing it this way kills Valko, it kills the game. Don't respond to trolls or provocateurs. They want escalation. But yeah, I would just say if anyone is out there panicking, feeling discouraged because of the silence, or if there's anyone who's wondering, what exactly could Infold possibly be doing right now, I hope this video was helpful in answering those questions for you, in kind of soothing your worries and giving you encouragement that things are on track, right? I mean, like, I can't make any promises that everything that Infold is doing is solely because they want to bring Valko back, right? They could just be, trying to get themselves out of the dirt, but maybe not necessarily planning on bringing Valko back. That is a possibility. However, I personally don't believe that to be the case. I truly believe like they are trying to dig themselves out of a ditch, yes, but they're also trying to bring Valko back into the game. I just believe a lot of the things that they have mentioned to us, you know, just when you look at the money, when you look at the things that they've done, it all seems to be pointing to them not being willing to let go of Valko if they have a chance to not let him go. So I believe we are heading in a good direction right now. The light at the end of the tunnel, it is coming closer to us, and we are getting closer to that light at the end of the tunnel. So hang in there, keep on doing what you're doing. Keep remembering Valko, keep boycotting, keep not spending money on the game. Keep showing your love for Valko. I hear that the latest that's been going on is there is this letter thing that the CN players have going on. Let me just show it right now, if I can. Oh, yes, this one. There is this web page, if you want to check it out, where they are essentially like taking letters from players all over the world, letters that show their love and appreciation for Valko. The website, I believe, is called To Valko with Love. Just look at that. So beautiful. All of these countries all over the world. So if that's something that you want to do, you can try to find this website, To Valko with Love, and you can add your own letter as well. Yeah, over here it says, yeah, the little wolf brought over 160 letters from more than 50 countries expressing love across mountains and seas. I'll try to find a way to share the link in the comment section if you want. But I myself am going to be making a letter. I'm showing my love and support for Valko there. I believe it's something that's so beautiful. And I just especially love how you can see the places all over the world where these letters are coming from. It's just so beautiful to see that. Anyway, yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it was helpful for you. See you in my next video. Bye.